Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, Tampa Bay. It's a bit outcast out here again in Tampa Bay. Let's see, we got our weather looking like 87 degrees right now. And this week we have a tropical storm, Bertha, that just formed out in the Gulf, which is bringing in some strong gusts of wind around 17 miles per hour. And that tropical storm is also bringing us a bit of rain that we desperately need. And let's see. Like I said, it's currently 87 degrees. It looks like it's about to rain in a couple minutes out here in Ybor City. We got a high of 91 today. Another hot one, but hopefully this wind keeps us comfortable. Hopefully the rain brings that temperature down a bit. But today we got a few things to cover. We got La La Land being re-released in theaters this August. And today we're actually going to talk about the Dune 3 trailer because I did not get to it last week. And this week I also went out and saw The Odyssey. So we got a bit of a Odyssey breakdown, and we also watched House of the Dragon on Sunday night, 9 p.m.s every week. Gonna be breaking down episode 5 again this week. But let's get started with some La La Land. La La Land re-release. Interesting. I've, only seen La La Land once in my life. I didn't love La La Land. A lot of people love La La Land. A lot of people love that director. Let's see. La La Land 2016, Damien Chazelle. You know, Lots of people like his movies. I didn't love his other movie, Whiplash, a drummer movie. But La La Land, cute musical. Interestingly enough, a lot of talks about the poster online. 10 years ago, they just took a screenshot from an iconic dance scene from the main characters that Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling play. Very iconic snapshot that they used as a poster. And they just 10 years later re-edited that poster to fix Ryan Gosling's hand for, to appeal to their online audience, I suppose. you know, can't put it past them. Can't put it past them. But let's get into a bit of the Dune 3 trailer. Dune. I love Dune. I love the books. I feel 22 all over again. We got Dune coming out. We got House of the Dragon coming out weekly. But to open up our Dune trailer, we have a little bit of fighting going on between the character Chani, played by Zendaya, and the character of Paul, played by Timothée Chalamet. Which, if you knew, or if you know the story of Dune, you know that Paul isn't necessarily the best person in the world, but he is the most powerful person in the world. He is a character in the story that is called the Kwisatz Haderach, which, just to, get to the basics, basically he's just an all-knowing being. He's got a lot of power with that. And that goes back to the first Dune when Paul is asking about why the Bene Gesserit is so interested in him. He's asking his mother, Jessica, who is a part of this, how do I want to say, like space witches cult, however you want to look at it. Paul's questioning his mom why these witches are so interested in him and why the people of Arrakis that they're moving to believe him to be this Messiah coming back to save them. It all goes back to a couple hundred years before this story when the Bene Gesserit went to the planet of Arrakis and implemented this belief system of a Messiah coming to save their planet. But in the trailer, we have seen a little bit of changes happening. The director has made changes in the past couple films, mainly along the lines of the younger sister of Paul, the character of Aaliyah. But it's looking like this movie is gonna bring in a bit of more war scenes, which, if you read the books, you would know that Dune Messiah, the second Dune book, takes place after their Great War. So it's Paul's already in power at this point. But, gotta keep audiences interested, gotta bring in maybe some flashbacks. I'm hoping that it's gonna be, a little bit of flashbacks just to like get us in the headspace of where these characters are. We want to understand where Chani is coming from when she's, disappointed in her partner, Paul, because he very much told her that he was not going to take power in his name, and especially not on her home her home planet. But later in the trailer, we are also seeing imagery of someone walking through ashes. I'm thinking it's going to be Paul's sister, Aaliyah, who does play a very important role in the first Dune book, which, again, they did change for the films. I can't complain too much about the changes. I love the director, Denis Villeneuve. Great director. I love what he did with the story. I think it makes a lot of sense that he changed the story to make it more focused on Paul rather than, his family lineage altogether. But with Messiah, we also know that his lineage does come into play. We have characters introduced in the last film, like the Princess Irulan, who is a narrator throughout the entirety of the first Dune book. She was only introduced in Dune Part 2. Again, just to like tie things back to Paul. We want to focus on Paul. We want to focus on Arrakis. It made things a little bit, I don't want to say uneasy for the story, but we did get her in the last film. We get more of her in this film when she's working with this new character played by Robert Pattinson. His character's name is Skytail. He is also working with the Bene Gesserit and the Princess Irulan to conspire against Paul to make sure that the Bene Gesserit can regain their control over these different family lines. We have the Princess Irulan coming from the Emperor's family, and we have Paul coming from the Atreides family, and we have, let's see, the last films we had the Harkonnen family, which mostly got taken down in the last film. Think they may still cause a bit of drama going forward. And in this trailer, we are also reintroduced to Duncan, Idaho. Wait a second, is that actually Duncan, Idaho? I don't want to get too into the nitty gritty of things, but we do have Jason Momoa coming back to Dune 3 to reprise his role of Duncan, Idaho. He is playing a bit of a different character, but you will come to find out what that character is when you see the film later this year. But let's see. I suppose that is enough Dune 3 talk for today. And we are going to take a little bit of a break. And I got one of my favorite bands. We got Best Coast with some California Nights. And welcome back. Welcome back. You know, come to think about it, I don't even think I introduced my show today. You know, you're listening to Stel Space. I'm your host, Stel. I don't know what's going on with me today. I wasn't feeling the best this morning. It's still the morning. Who am I kidding? I'm all over the place. But we're back. We're back. We're back. We're better than ever. And we are going to be getting into our Odyssey breakdown. I went to go see the Odyssey the day before it came out, which pretty crazy. Came out last Friday. Came out July 17th. I saw it July 16th at 2 p.m. in IMAX. Not too shabby, not too shabby. Pretty good, pretty good Christopher Nolan film. Can't lie there. He definitely knows how to make a movie. But I can't lie, can't love how he told the story. Unfortunately, he told it in his Christopher Nolan way, as, you know, Christopher Nolan would tell his story of the Odyssey. But we have Matt Damon playing the lead Odysseus. We have Anne Hathaway playing his wife, Penelope, and Tom Holland playing their son, Telemachus. And we have Robert Pattinson playing Antinius, Zendaya playing Athena. We have Lupita Nyong'o playing Helen and her sister Clytemnestra. And we have Charlize Theron playing Calypso, with Benny Safdie playing Agamemnon, with his brother of Menelaus being played by John Bernthal. Definitely did not say his last name correctly. Sorry about that. But we have Elliot Page playing not Achilles, but playing Sinon, with Samantha Morton playing Cersei. Surprisingly, we have a budget of $200 million, which I was surprised about. I thought it would be a lot bigger budget than that. You know, not the biggest budget for a huge blockbuster like this, but for the opening weekend of the Odyssey, they got $124 million. Pretty huge opening for them, honestly, especially for an R-rated film. But it was entirely filmed on IMAX, so a lot of people are pushing for that IMAX viewing. And honestly, just what a spectacle that was. What a very visually stunning film. I can't lie. And unfortunately, I didn't get the entire picture, I guess, even though I did see it in IMAX. All of that very much confuses me, but, you know, saw it in digital IMAX, can't complain, didn't get the picture cut off as badly as a regular digital showing, but As the online people do, they have to complain about everything. There's a good amount of backlash about the fact that there's only around 40 theaters in the entirety of the world, with most of those theaters being in the United States. To get that full image, which brings into question, how fair is it to make one of the most anticipated films, a 3,000-year-old story? Basically, everybody should know the story of the Odyssey. A lot of people in the world were very excited to see this film. But, you know, yeah, yeah, yeah. But we're going to start off with our discussion of the film, breaking down some plot points, breaking down the story a bit. Gonna start off on a bit of a negative note. Have to say, don't really love the fact that the entire cast kept American accents, interestingly enough, because we did have a bit of British actors in this film. I personally thought, since we're not going to have a Greek cast, obviously they're not going to be speaking Greek. I thought it would have been very interesting to have everybody keeping their own accent. Bring everybody into the movie like they did, and unfortunately give them American accents too. But Anne Hathaway is here, and we love Mia Thermopolis. We love Mia Thermopolis. If you've seen the Princess Diaries, we know Anne Hathaway has played a Greek character before. Can't be too mad about her playing Penelope. And I can't be too mad about Lupita Nyong'o also being included in this film. I thought she did a great job as Helen and her twin sister in the film of Clytemnestra. That is a very difficult name, even as a Greek American, to say. I thought she did a stunning job. I thought her performance was great. I also thought Elliot Page's performance was great. Everybody thought Elliot Page was going to be playing the fictional character of Achilles, but instead they were playing the fictional character of Sinon, who, interestingly enough, I don't believe is even in the the story of the Odyssey. But you know, I thought it was well done. I thought that character was well done. I actually enjoyed the most um out of the film the Trojan War aspect. So I did enjoy Elliot Page's character. But just to go back, we are opening this film with the suitors feasting in Ithaca with Telemachus, while Penelope is weaving the loom that she weaves for a good 3 years in this story, while all of the suitors who are trying to win Penelope's hand since her husband Odysseus has been gone for, let's see, I guess it would be around 10, 20 years. He's gone. He's gone for 10 years for the Trojan Wars. It takes him 10 years to get back home after the war. But everybody's in his home, eating his food, drinking his wine, trying to win the hand of his wife. But we very quickly set up the story in Ithaca. We have Telemachus trying to figure out who his father is. He didn't really have a relationship with him as he was sent off to the Trojan War, and seemingly Nolan does expect us to have a bit of knowledge of this story and these characters, which is very fair, as this is again a 3,000-year-old story. However, you can very easily follow this story, even if you don't know it. He's not gonna hold your hand necessarily, but he is walking us through the story of the Odyssey, and personally does a very well job at that, even though he does make some changes. We have storylines set up in the beginning, like Odysseus's bow that only he can string, as well as him plucking the string, which is a very important character development, character display that the character of Odysseus has. And we also see that Antinius, played by Robert Pattinson, did switch place with the character of Sinon early in the story. Of course, it's a Christopher Nolan story. We are going to get flashbacks, so that was a flashback. But we also see flashbacks of Agamemnon summoning Odysseus for the Battle of Troy. And we get that scene when Telemachus is meeting with Menelaus and his wife Helen, who, interestingly enough, unfortunately, kind of started this entire Trojan War. She and this character named Paris in the story of the Iliad, which is a... Don't necessarily want to say it's prequel, because I'm pretty sure it did get released before the Odyssey. So the Odyssey would be the sequel to the Iliad. But just to get into a little bit of the Trojan War, since they don't exactly get into the nitty-gritty of why they are fighting this war. But we have Paris abducting Menelaus' wife, Helen. Causes a lot of drama, and it's the Mediterranean Sea all over the place, because Troy is technically set in Turkey. So we have the Greeks coming over from Greece to cross the sea into the city of Troy to get Menelaus' wife back. And after this great Trojan War, we obviously see the great voyage back home that Odysseus gets to take in his 10-year-long voyage. But just to get back to the Trojan horse, I honestly loved the design of the Trojan horse. I thought they did a great job with making it seem like, obviously it's a wooden structure. It's a large wooden structure. And what else is a large wooden structure that these ancient people very much used all the time? Ships. So of course they made the Trojan horse look like a ship, and I thought that was a great addition to the film. I thought that was a great design choice that they made. I thought the Trojan horse looked absolutely stunning. I loved the scene of the Trojans bringing back what they thought was the gift of the horse. I thought that was very epic, very well done, well told. And obviously, we get some scenes of the war, but this story is about Odysseus trying to find his way back home. And because of his actions in the war, we do get a little bit of punishing from the gods. The gods aren't too happy with how cunning this Odysseus is. He tricked them so well by getting them to take that wooden horse. But with the gods punishing Odysseus and his crew, they come across an island where they find a cave. Interestingly enough, they did film this scene in historical landmarks, a cave where they do believe that I believe, because I did watch the making of the Odyssey, the film that is for free. It was posted for free on YouTube. I highly recommend it. A lot of insight on how they made this film. But we have Odysseus and his crew coming up to an island and stumbling across a cave with some food rations in there. And surprisingly enough, a Cyclops comes in named Polyphemus with, a great horror sequence, honestly, done by Nolan. He hasn't fully tapped into horror, but he does tap into horror 2 times in this film with this first scene of the Cyclops. Personally, don't fully enjoy the design of Polyphemus. A bit boring, in my opinion, but still a very entertaining scene, of course. And we have Odysseus eventually escaping, the cave. We have to move on the story, but Odysseus, as we might know, does attack Polyphemus after they escape, which, unfortunately for him, Polyphemus is a child of the god Poseidon. So Polyphemus calls out to his father, and Poseidon puts a curse on Odysseus and his crew, which, kind of starts off their very long voyage home with, you know, very rocky waters, very interesting islands that these crew members end up with, again, for the second horror sequence on another island, this time at Circe's island, where in the original story she does live in a very nice palace with lots of food, but it is an surprisingly empty palace with only animals around her. But as we know, Circe does turn people into animals, and that was another great scene done by Nolan, another good horror sequence, and another practical sequence done. I thought the horror makeup that they did was very well done. And, of course, because Odysseus is so cunning, he does make his way out of there and back onto sea. But, all of these curses, he's not having an easy time. He's still struggling to get back home. And unfortunately, it does end in the death of his entire crew. But after this long 10 years back home, we finally get Odysseus back home at Ithaca, where he comes back as a character, a stranger, a beggar character. He wants to suss out the situation back at home. He's been gone again for 20 years at this point. He fought a 10-year war, and then he had to fight his way back home against the gods just to get back to his wife Penelope and Ithaca, his homeland of Ithaca. But he does find his way back home, and we do get a very great ending with Odysseus stringing his bow. We should know how this story ends. Odysseus does get to I guess, re-impress his wife. He came back home after 20 years. He's gonna show his strength against all of these suitors that want his wife's hand. And in the original text, he does take down every single suitor and every single person in that room, and it would have been very fun to see that. But, one guy against an entire room of people, mm, gotta bring it back to reality. So I don't fully mind that change. I did enjoy the suitors who began to kneel for their king back at Ithaca. And I'm not gonna fully get into the ending. I'm gonna stop there with our Odyssey rundown. Nolan make some changes to the end of the story, which I personally did enjoy. Maybe I didn't enjoy some costume designs for the ending, but that's for you guys to make your own conclusions on. But we are going to take another break. This time, another favorite band of mine. We have No Doubt with Sunday Morning. And we are back. Welcome back to Stel Space. This segment, we are going to get into our House of the Dragon breakdown. Last week we had episode 5, Unbowed and Unbent, which is an interesting play on the House Martell words, unbowed, unbent, unbroken. Of course, we do have a Dornish. I don't know if we necessarily have main characters in the story. I guess in the show we have main characters with Rhaenyra and Alicent. Maybe a side character, Christian Cole. He is Dornish. So I believe they are playing into, words that he might relate to. But interestingly, missing that unbroken aspect of the house words of House Martell, which, just goes into show that maybe this character isn't fully unbroken. He might be a little bit broken, but I guess we'll get into that. We are opening this episode with Christian Cole ambushing the Riverland army and burning down bridges so that the Riverland army can't cross them. The Riverland army can't get to the places they need to because Christian Cole is doing these guerrilla war tactics against this large Riverland army, also joined by the older men from the north. I don't remember what they're called. But with the leader of the Riverland army, Oscar Tully, we're starting with him talking about how Christian's gonna do this, so Oscar's gonna do this. He's gonna fight fire with fire. And throughout the episode, we are shown that perhaps Oscar Tully is maybe doing the right thing here with fighting fire with fire, doing the same things, gonna do the same guerrilla tactics against Christian Cole and his army. And we get to a scene back at King's Landing with Alicent and her daughter Helena, and this poor girl Helena. This family's gonna push her off the ledge. I can't stand her family. Helena might be my favorite character. All she wants to do is study bugs. She just wants to be in the God's Woods, reading her books, reading textbooks about insects and animals. She just wants to take care of her bugs. And this family, oh my goodness. But we see that Alicent is trying to get her daughter to drink moon tea to avoid later issues that having an heir to the throne would very much bring them, especially since we just recently had Queen Rhaenyra take the throne in her name. You know, Rhaenyra Targaryen. She's supposed to be the rightful heir to the throne. And we jump to Aemond, still in Harrenhal, but, you know, maybe taking some things from Daemon from season 2. Last season, we had Daemon having a lot of nightmares. It was a big joke online because he kept having nightmares. He was basically living the same nightmare every single episode. And we're going to see Aemond do a little bit of that. The show creators, I guess, took a bit of criticism to heart. They're not going to fully give us, you know, in my opinion, visually interesting sequences because the dream sequences were visually interesting. But we see Alice River providing a bit of support for Aemond. She, of course, might think that she can use his power for her own benefit, especially since Daemon wasn't going to allow her to use, you know, Daemon's power for her benefit to, you know, maybe get some power in her home of the Riverland. She does live in Harrenhal. And we jump to a discussion with the Queen, Rhaenyra, discussing some murders of her City Watch soldiers. You know, we don't fully know who's doing this. I mean, I guess we can make... we can take some context clues, you know. We had the Green Targaryens just in rule here. Obviously, it's only been a few weeks of Rhaenyra's rule. Of course, there's still going to be some green loyalists in the capital and in the city of Fleabottom. So, you know, understandably, we are getting some murders of the City Watch members, and we get to see the council again, maybe siding with, you know, a male leader like Daemon Targaryen rather than their, you know, queen, Rhaenyra Targaryen, his wife, where Daemon's kind of making his own decisions, even though he is working with Rhaenyra's best intentions. He's still making his own choices, but, you know, gotta take what we can get, I guess. And Daemon goes off to investigate the city and try to figure out who's killing these members of the City Watch, especially since he has a good hand with these soldiers. He was the person who originally brought up this Gold Cloak army to keep watch over the city, keep order, you know, maybe not keep order in the best way. They are a very violent force, unfortunately. But, you know, you gotta keep order somehow. And we jump to Aegon and Larys, still wandering around the woods. You know, they're having a little bit of fun with their story. They get a little bit of comedic relief with these two characters. Can't complain too much about them. I did enjoy their scene this episode where Larys is, you know, ripping that band-aid off hard for Aegon. He's putting him right in his place, just like he should. You know, Aegon's wincing quite a bit about how his younger brother maybe had a little bit easier because he wasn't exactly, you know, put on as many restraints as, you know, the heir to the throne would have been. Like Aegon had a bit more restraint a little bit more control from the people above him because they want him to be seen in the right light. But that brings into an interesting conversation of the second sons of these families. You know, we have Aemon Targaryen being a second son with, you know, his uncle as well. Daemon Targaryen being a second son to his older brother who used to be king as well, Viserys Targaryen. These second sons want to make a name for themselves in this world because they aren't handed they're still handed titles, obviously, but they're not handed, you know, the crown per se, unless their older brother passes away, like some of these people do. But we are back in the Riverlands where we are shown imagery of a spider in their web, which I was very interested in. I thought that was a very interesting, you know, kind of on the nose of what's exactly happening with the characters in the scene. We are back with Kristen Cole and Gwen Hightower, indicating that they might be walking into a trap, but maybe some people aren't necessarily too upset with that because Kristen Cole isn't, you know, as highborn as a Hightower would be. He's kind of expecting the worst outcome no matter what. So, walking into a trap he might do just to get some good songs made about him. Which good songs were made about him? You know, he is remembered throughout the history of this story. And we are shown that Hightower is going to leave Kristen Cole's army because he doesn't want to walk into a trap, which, you know, Hightower has the luxury of being able to walk away because he has the name to do that. He has the power to do anything he wants to do. You know, he's still going to show face, he's still going to follow his responsibilities, but he's still going to make decisions that are going to keep him alive. And jumping back to King's Landing, we see Alicent and the character of Miss Arya meeting for the first time, and maybe seemingly coming to an agreement, as Alicent has a lot of power because she is a Hightower as well. So, you know, if Rhaenyra's side were to fall, which, you know, all of these, you know, Rhaenyra has a lot of power. She has 6 dragons. But it's still pretty easy for some of these families to fall, even if they have a lot of power, like 6 dragons. And even though they have 6 dragons, they still have a lot of drama happening in their own sides of the family. But we get to see Ormond and Daeron in the city of Tumbleton still. They are still sitting in Tumbleton. This time they are playing this game called Savas, which is the Westerosi version of our real world game of chess. Very cool to see that the show creators brought this game into the show, as this game was introduced in the main book series, I want to say in the 4th and 5th books, because I guess I should say that game was in, or originally in the continent of Essos and brought over to the Dornish land in Westeros in book 4. So, you know, maybe not historically accurate to you know, this book or this show is based off of a fake fictional history book, but still very interesting to see them bringing more things into this world on screen. And we see Ormond discussing with Daeron how they must be cunning, similar to how the Martells were cunning when they first fought against the Targaryens, when the Targaryens came to Dorne to force Dorne to join the Seven Kingdoms, which Dorne did fight back well against the Targaryens and their dragons with some more guerrilla warfare. You know, got a lot of ties in this story. And a lot of well done ties, because I think it is pretty well done, bringing in the historical aspects of the people that came before the people we're following in the story, where, like, of course, the main series continues through history without these people, but their songs are told for many years to come. And Ormond also reveals this coin with Daeron's face on it. You know, a little bit of propaganda still happening here, funnily enough, for them, but it brings in a very interesting plot device for them. Especially since Daeron still, again, has two older brothers. I don't fully know what Ormond Hightower is fully thinking with this plan. They're not only committing treason against Rhaenyra Targaryen, they're also committing treason against their own side with the Green Targaryens, because Aegon and Aemon are still alive. Daeron is the third brother. And back at Harrenhal, we have Alis and Aemon discussing the alleged death of Aegon. But, you know, Alis doesn't believe that to be true. She's seemingly a witch of Harrenhal, so she might have a little bit more insight to the truth, maybe through the Weirwood tree connections. But hopefully they get into a bit of that in the coming episodes, because I do very much enjoy that aspect of this show. And we have, with Aegon Targaryen, Tywin Lannister popping back up in the show, and it's nice to see a familiar face popping back into the show. Even though I might not love his character fully, it's still fun to see people coming back, because we weren't fully aware of what happened to Tywin Lannister earlier this season in the Battle of the Gullet, when he was pushed off of his ship into the Gullet with his, chainmail on. He could have easily drowned in the sea. But luckily for him, he still has a lot of stuff to fulfill in the story, but we'll see where that leads in the episodes to come. And ending off the episode, we have Alicent and Helena trying to escape through secret tunnels in the Red Keep built by Maegor the Cruel. Them getting lost basically right off the bat, but they do have these newly appointed rat catchers with these cats that Rhaenyra did introduce in the last episode to hunt down the rats that have taken over in the castle. We're going to bring in some cats, but the cats, they're going to know how to get around in this castle. They are running around these places all the time. So hopefully Alicent and her daughter Helena don't struggle too much with the secret tunnels that neither of them have ever been in before. And for the end of the episode, we see that Daemon is finding more corpses of the City Watch. This time we are left with imagery of a Last Supper. In the last episode, episode 4, we were shown images, or not images, just a scene of a feast happening in Rhaenyra Targaryen's quarters. She was holding a feast for the noble-born families because she was kind of teaching them a lesson. She was feeding them rats. But interestingly enough, the people in her city aren't going to know what exactly went on in that room, so they're gonna fight back. You know, these nobleborns are gonna have a feast. We're gonna show them by taking down the people that protect them, taking down the City Watch, and we are left with imagery of the Last Supper, which, as we all know, happens before the death of Jesus Christ. So, who exactly are they implying are going to die next? You know, which Messiah is going to die in this world? But that ends us with our House of the Dragon recap, and we are going to take another short break, this time with Taylor Swift, forever and always, and we will be back shortly. And we are back to Stel Space. I'm going to keep this segment very short because we are over a little bit of time because we had some technical difficulties earlier. But as we might know from my previous episode, I like to end my episodes with a little bit of media of the week. And obviously, of course, since I already talked about The Odyssey, you know I watched that. You know how I feel about that. I watched House of the Dragon. We know how I feel about that. Great show. Love that. Unfortunately, this week didn't watch any movies. But for music that I might want to shout out, of course, recently we had Madonna release a new album earlier this month on July 3rd with her, I guess I would call a sequel to her album Confessions. We got Confessions 2 by Madonna. Oh, what a good pop dance album. If you haven't listened to it, if you love dance music, I highly recommend it. I absolutely love how this album flows between the songs. I think it flows very well. And I love what Madonna did. I think she's making a lot of references to her own previous, many, many decades of work. She's now 68 years old and she's been in the industry for, like 40, I want to say 40 years now. Maybe 50, I suppose. But another great album by Madonna. For some favorites, I will say, of course, the opener with I Feel So Free, I think is a very fun song. And I also love the song that she did with Sabrina Carpenter, Bring Your Love. And I absolutely love how that song transitions into Danceteria. Absolutely stunning. Absolutely stunning. Can't get any better than that. Another great pop dance album that came out this year. We have Slater's new album of Worst Girl in America. That came out in March of 2026. A couple months ago, but still very impactful today. And I'm excited to see her in a couple months in September. I'm going to go to Atlanta to go see Slater. But for some favorite songs from Worst Girl in America, I want to say when that album first came out, obviously I loved the singles that were coming out. Beat Up Chanel's very good song. Crank, very energetic, good song. And Brittany Murphy was another favorite of mine when the album first came out. I still love all of those songs, but now since I've spent more time with the album, I absolutely love the two songs in the middle of the album, Unknown Lovers, and right afterwards, Old Flings. I very much love how those songs contrast between each other, almost, but still very similar. But another great album this year. And I suppose some news that we are looking forward to. Still no release date, but Lana Del Rey has again announced albums. Well, I guess she announced a second album that she's made, but she's announced again that it's coming allegedly very soon. This album, Stove, highly anticipated by many people. A lot of good, or not a lot, but a couple good singles already. I think she's released 3 singles from the album Stove. Very strong, very country-esque, country-inspired, folk-inspired album. And then she also announced a album called Spider. Very interesting there. Not her first time doing back-to-back albums. Again, we had her in 2021 when she released Chemtrails Over the Country Club and Blue Banisters, basically back-to-back off of each other. And seemingly she's gonna do that again. Hopefully, fingers crossed, 2026. I need more Lana Del Rey, one of my favorite artists of all time. I've listened to her since her debut album of Born to Die all the way back in 2011, 2012? Question mark? Don't hold me off on that. But, very exciting stuff here. But that ends us off for our second episode of Stel Space. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will catch you again next week, Tuesday at 11 a.m. I will see you then. Have a very good day. Goodbye.